Ekonene. So it's a new week and kuna hizi stories zimekuwa zikihappen this weekend, and hizi stories zinakuonyesha tu the sort of people who are supposed to save us from poverty and how they look at money. Because mu believe ndio mtu abaki ameokoa Kenya, lazima tupate like a leader who's going to understand how people are struggling. And for a very long time wasema kusema that leader ni Raila Odinga, but this past weekend tulibaki tumecheki wife wake alikuwa ameisha hizi maside za Migori, alafu akibonga nikaka kuwa heckled, alafu akikehekoliwa akatuonyesha maybe how she relates to money. Wacha tumsikize. So hapa alikuwa nabonga juu nyithi Migori. Nyithi Migori ni watoto wa Migori. Mkiniona vile nikiongea hapa, mimi ni mtoi hapa Migori. So ni kama hakuwa happy with the heckling. Yes? Wacha tuendelee. So akabonga juu the fact that ali grow up Migori, alisomea Migori, and this bad behavior, if you think it's politics, then it's not politics. Nikimaliza kuongea, najua pale nilisimamisha ndege yangu. Hiyo ndege yangu. Alafu, tuendelee. Nilisimamisha ndege yangu pale, najua hapo. Nataka msimame kando kwa barabara, nitembee moja kwa moja mpaka kwa ndege yangu. Don't forget, these are the people who are supposed to uplift us from poverty. Okay. So, staki mtu yote atanisindikiza. Sikukujia, okay, your last words janini. But yes, so this is her relationship with money. And unacheki like, kuna kuagana kitu moja inaitwa ni empathy ama compassion. I don't know which term to use, but the fact that the crowd that you're talking to can barely survive, unajua, and that's why they're angry. Unajua, our politicians, they make it seem like people are just angry for no reason. Like, why are you angry? I think nile story ilikuwa gani Mario Antoinette ile like, they're crying for bread, why don't you give them cake? And that's the same sort of attitude na get from hapa. Joe anaenda kwa ndege yangu najua pale imesimama. Like, don't do that. I know you are angry, but as a leader, even when you are angry, because huyu ni a leader by default. Najua sasa shida ya Kenya ni come up tukakuwa na history ya ni STL, sexually transmitted leadership. It's something that we have. Najua it happens, that's why we have first ladies. Kumbuka hata kulikuwa na ujinga ya office of the office of the spouse of the prime minister, prime secretary. You remember that nonsense? So there is that bullshit. So kulikuwa na mother, and before tupongejua rais, because rais pia lituonyesha vile yeye relating na pesa. Like one of the funniest videos ile nilibaki nimesharewa, nikabaki nimeona ilikuwa hii video pia ya Raila. And kuna kuagana wase Musa magana kuagana kijiti kwa haga. Unajua those people who take life so seriously, like every small thing wakola bona mwafu bado anabonga hivyo, bona nini. So kama kuna word fulani mupendaga kutumia ni word jo, na vile Raila ameitumia na Raila iko 80, sitaki mtu yote aniambie that mimi jo siwezi tumia hii word jo. So kwa nashindwa ni word gani? Acha tusikize Raila. Raila alikuwa pale akibonga juu ya intermarriages between Kalenjins and Luos na akatumia hii word. Hii word mupenda kuitumia?
Kata kinembe. Ndoa kati ya Wajaluo na Wakalenjin si mingi sana. Sijui kama mnajua kwa sababu gani. Wajaluo wanaoana sana na Waluhya. Sababu ni mambo ya hii ya kukata kinembe. FGM. Hiyo ni sababu. Waluhya walikuwa hawakati. kwa sababu Wajaluo wanaoana sana na Waluhya, lakini kwa sababu Wanandi walikuwa nakata, Wakipsigis wanakata, hata Wakisii Masai na Wakure walijua hapana, si tunataka ile earth wire.
Si tunataka ile athwaya. Yaani ubuda anajua kinembe jo atiyo umri jo. Cause nafikiriaga hiyo generation ya mabuda zetu ilikuwaga haina shughuli na hiyo kitu. That's why utapata kuna buda fulani kwa pahali kuna staki demu kuna kinembe. Utaki live wire. Utaki live. Kwa nini utaki live wire? Nimedigress. Wacha to go back to leadership. So you come to leadership. One of the things Musa Magani, if you're going to lead people, you have to understand the sort of people you're leading. And I feel like there's a very big disconnect between the Kenyan population and the Kenyan leaders. And that big disconnect was clearly shown this past weekend. Ruto alienda pame share farm yake. Alafu akishare farm, what happens is, of course, watu wake wa Instagram wataenda po wametusharia kutuonyesha like, the president and understand, he's a farmer, unajua he's a wheat farmer, and that means that he understands the plight of farmers. And now there were a few controversies around the farm. First of all, kuna waswana believe that the farm itself, it was grabbed in quotes. I don't know if that's I don't know how true that is. So kuna walisema hiyo land imekuwa grabbed. I don't know if it's grabbed or not. But one of the things that stood out still about the farm was what Ruto was wearing. Najua alikuwa amevaa nini akiwa kwa hii farm. So kuna wasa walienda wakapiga research juu hiyo jacket yake, na the jacket itself is Stefano Ricci. Kwa umecheki nikibonga juu buda, unajuaga like they always say every shirt that he wears has to be a Stefano Ricci. The cheapest Stefano Ricci shirt is $2,000. Nacheki. So every shirt anavaa ni at least 260,000. Alafu sasa jacket, you can make a wild guess. If the shirt is 200,000 shillings, you expect maybe the jacket, maybe it's on the higher side, $1 million shillings? No. He ended up wearing a jacket that's worth 6 million shillings. 6 million shillings. And you're supposed to lead people who survive on less than $1 per day. You're wearing a jacket worth 6 million shillings. And people don't see the problem. Kuna jinga takuwa like, but ni pesa yake, ni pesa yake. Hii ni biashara gani anafanya? Ile si atufanya. Hii ni biashara gani? The only business he does is the business of government. Na pia lazima ujiulize kwa nini hakuwa anavaa hizi vitu akiwa DP. As soon as he become the president, now he started wearing this very expensive stuff. And you have situations whereby you have of course Uhuru alituona. Uhuru akibonga juu tunaangalia nyuma, unashtukia tai imetolewa, unaangalia hivi unashtukia nini imetolewa. You have to think about it. Like hii jacket alikuwa amevaa inaitwa lambskin and crocodile blouson. Alafu it's the ideal item to level up luxury casual wear. Lambskin leather, matted crocodile leather na zip front. Ina go for 48,350. If you have to multiply that by 130, let's round off. 48,000 will round off to 50. The nearest 10,000, that's 50,000. Alafu Nini ni $131, but we'll bring it down to 130. And this comes to around 6.5 million. So of course to include taxes, because lazima angelipa tax huko. So we are looking at the president wearing something close to 7 million. And he's representing people who can barely eat a meal. And people don't see the disconnect. You don't see the disconnect that I'm 100% sure there's a class somewhere in Sugoi that does not have desks. That's Sugoi. Let's not talk about the bigger Kenya. How much money can this do? And this is the same guy who's always going to be ready to contribute to church, never to schools. You'll never hear that I may do this for a school. I may do this for... Like Saizi, after having Moi as a president and having Yeye as a president, there should not be, alafu him using all this luxury, money on luxury, there should not be any school in Rift Valley that lacks. Majuzi kuna ubuda anaitwa Mr. Beast, alikuwa amekuja hapa Kenya, ana provide sijui nini. Tushonaga the images of kids like learning in between trees. You're the president of a whole country, but I'm not even challenging you with the whole country. I'm challenging you with just a small place, just Sugoi. Let's start with Sugoi. These stories are extravagance. I'll never understand it. Like, I'll try to really understand. Like, you'll never even hear me complaining about a car, because gari na understand. Like, if you come to electronics, I understand that one electronic is superior to another. But if you come to clothing, leather, it's crocodile. It's bullshit. And for an African president, like, the only thing I can think about if you come to this guy is he wears expensive shirts and whatever, more expensive than Uhuru. Like, right now an argument can be made that the Ruto family is richer than the Kenyatta family. Try and imagine that. Try and imagine how Jomo Kenyatta looted this country. And now there's a probability that the Ruto family is richer than the Kenyatta family. How ridiculous is that? Because ask yourself this. If someone is wearing a jacket, 6.5 million shillings. And this is not his only jacket. Let's break that down to 1 billion shillings. 1 billion shillings divide by 6 million shillings. You'll get around 160. Sindio? So it means that if he's to spend on 160 more jackets, he'd have spent 1 billion. So how much money does this person have that he can comfortably spend 7 million shillings? Let's use 7 on a jacket. How much does he have? I don't know. But what I know is, in a country of extreme poverty, that's not a leader who's supposed to be leading such a country. There has to be a certain level of humility. Yes, I want to wear all this expensive stuff, but I can't wear it. Why? Because the people that I represent are barely surviving. So, not common sense, but decency dictates that I should not wear such expensive stuff. But of course, when you lead a population that does not see the disconnect, because if this was to happen in like a first world country, tuseme akina France, akina Germany, and their leader was to show up wearing very expensive stuff, na sayo the people are like unemployment iko, he'd resign. That's the difference between those countries na sisi. That's your own personal shit. Like umeamua, wacha niende wasata kwa kwa nini yo unaishi vizuri sisi, you don't understand our plight, alafu unabaki, alafu unapata mfala siku like mnataka kwenda Germany. Nakia monagi. A leader has to show compassion. But more than that, of course, saizi one of the things that everyone who supports Ruto is pushing ni tribalism, and they're really pushing the tribal narrative because that's the only way to make this guy survive. Otherwise, his unpopularity is so high that if we somehow don't bring back tribalism, it's going to be really hard for him to survive. So, kuna hii video moja ile nilichekia Duale, where now Duale decided to bring in IEBC. Alafu akibonga juu ya IEBC, alibonga juu ya like one tribe and saying the way that tribe is somehow hated. And that's the reason why hatufurahi IEBC. Wacha tusikize umse. And yeah.
And today I'm very happy the first minority has become the chairman of IEBC at Turkana. Very qualified. I know him at personal level. Very qualified lawyer. And people are comparing IEBC not because they have a problem with IEBC, because they have a problem with the chairman. Why is he coming from Turkana? But the constitution has given him, and the other members, and we want them to do. Once IEBC has been put in place, we know there will be election in 2027. Inshallah.
Macheki anataka ku bring up, since nianze ku go around kwa hii country, I've never had anyone who openly said they hated Turkanas. I know if you come to tribalism, even when I look at tribalism in Kenya, it's normally the big tribes that are always anti each other. So nishasikiaga Mjaka anasema anachukia Kikuyu, nishasikia Mkikuyu anasema anachukia Jaka. Hata tukiangalia even a simple issue as circumcision, very uncommon amongst the Luos, very uncommon amongst the Turkanas. Have you ever heard msote akimturkana akitukana juu circumcision? That's how much wanakuwaga under the radar. It's a non-issue that someone is a Turkana. For someone to show up and start claiming that somehow we do not want Ethekon because he's a Turkana is to be very dishonest. But this dishonesty comes with a tag of we want to bring back tribalism. Because the minute that there is no tribalism is the minute that William Samoei Ruto is in a lot of trouble. Najua, because how is he going to make us think that he's fit enough kuwa president and to continue for a second term? And ikikam to story yake na ikikam to story za IEBC, another interesting thing that happened this weekend is kuna vile bado Ruto alienda pa career point. Kuna mse fulani ule, mkikumbuka, when this guy was mentioned as one of the people who was looking for the chairmanship ya IEBC, I did a video complaining about this guy. And the guy that I'm talking about, kama umesahau, ni buda anaitwa Nyachai. So of course hakuweza kupata hiyo seat. I think maybe they felt that it was going to be too much heat, and it was so obvious that he was going to support the president, because yeye na ule madha mwingine ule alikuwa na trend majuzi anaitwa Joy Mdivo, those two we know them for being pro Ruto. So what happens? Kenyans.co.ke ilikuwa Ruto appoints Charles Nyachai, former MP and ex-PS, to government positions. So this guy was already the head of Nini. So ilikuwa President Ruto has reappointed Nyachai, a former candidate for the position of the chairperson of the IEBC, as the chair of the Kenya School of Government. I think this is where he was. Alafu akabaki ametoka kidogo ndiye kuwe chair wa IEBC. Alafu vile hakuipata akabaki amekuwa reappointed again. So this shows you how this was an obvious choice wa Ruto. And this is the reason why there is a cloud over Ethekon. And Ethekon has to know that this cloud, there is no way to escape this cloud unless he does what he's supposed to do in 2027, which is declare the rightful winner. If somehow Ruto is able to convince us to go back to him and he declares Ruto as the winner, sawa. But do not try any tricks. Hizi tricks za sijui kuzama mother amekuwa kitokea apart from a mother kina Sudi wanatuambia the way they are going to rig the elections. And majuzi, I think it was on Sunday, IEBC ended up releasing a statement, and on that statement they were saying the way that is reckless. But do you know why we start getting worried? When we hear even someone like Duale telling us that he personally knows Ethekon, we start getting a problem with that. Acheki. Like, sawa, you personally know him. Why are you telling us that? And apart from that, we look at someone like Nyachai. So Nyachai 1 minute misses out on IEBC, and as soon as he misses out on IEBC, he's reappointed. That means the government is the one that asked him to apply. Otherwise, we mwenye enda leo, you resign from a lucrative position and see if you're going to get it back. The minute that umetoka, someone else is going to be put in that position. So you have this situation where I don't know what's going to happen in 2027. But one of the things that I keep saying is, as long as we show up in big numbers, there are margins that can't be messed up with. And this is what happened like in 2002, where the margin was so big that Uhuru could not become president because even Moi knew there was nothing that Moi could have done for your time. But in this situation whereby these people just keep thumping their chests and telling us how they are going to rig the election, it becomes very tricky. So, kulikuwa na hii statement. Ilikuwa ni statements on election malpractices. This one was posted on the 13th of July 2025. The commission is concerned about the statements on election malpractices in the country. Such utterances are unacceptable and reckless in a democratic society such as ours, and IEBC urges all Kenyans to ignore or disassociate with them. While IEBC will constitute the Electoral Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee as prescribed under Article blah 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 of the Kenyan Constitution, read together with blah 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 blah, the committee has jurisdiction only during the election period in accordance with the judgment of Honorable Sabina Chege's Supreme Court petition. Then ikaendelea. So wacha tuendelee. Mwisho alisema IEBC assures members of the public that it shall safeguard its independence and impartiality while discharging its constitutional mandate as it functions, as well as remains committed to ensuring free, fair and credible elections. So there's this theory that Ruto has to do 2 terms because blah 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 did 2 terms. That is nonsense. There's a reason why we have elections every 5 years. If you don't do what people want, you go. And you might think you're doing what people want, but if they're not happy with what you're doing, you still go. Najua, you do something else. Kenya as a country, mimi mwenyewe nilipataga Kenya. it existed when I was born. When I'm gone, Kenya will still be there. So there should not be any entitlement of I have to be the leader of Kenya. So that's nonsense. Alafu talking of leadership, another interesting thing ile niliona ni kuna kitu fulani ile ubuda anaitwa Sifuna alikuwa amesema, and nishaisemaga but in different words, but now Sifuna alibaki ame break down like what's happening right now, and the president's statement of earlier this week, because the president, one of the things like alifanyaga the first day that he got into office, alibaki ame sign a police budget. And this budget was the budget that was going to show us that the police are fully independent. So, wacha tusikize Sifuna.
Wanatuambia kila siku ati polisi iko independent, wao wanafanya mambo yao. Leo hii imekuwaje wewe unatoa amri kwa polisi ati wao wapige watu risasi? Inamaanisha hao watu wote wamepigwa risasi, wewe ndio umekuwa ukituma polisi, si ndio? Ashindwe asishindwe, ashindwe asishindwe. Mimi nataka niwamalizie kwa kuwaambia
like 1 minute Ruto anatuambia that the police are independent, then the next minute the same Ruto tells the police to shoot people, not to kill them but to shoot them in the legs. Najua, like, you can only lie for so long. Anyone with some basic common sense alikuwa najua the police are not independent. Najua they are not. It's rather obvious. Everything that they do is to please the executive. So as long as the executive is pleased, the police will end up being the police. So hiyo ni kitu moja ilikuwa tunajua, but yes, so this is the sort of leadership that we have. So it's been a very interesting weekend. One leader was busy reminding people of her aeroplane, and I'm calling her leader because she represents Raila. And every time that she talks, it's like Raila is talking, and I'm sure if you listen to her, you'll hear kuna pali atasema kitu kama hiyo, nikiongea ni kama Jakoma ameongea. So she represents that. Alafu, on the other side, you have a president. And the president was busy wearing a jacket worth 6.5 million shillings. So, what sort of leadership are we talking about? And this also reminds me that Kenya ukiangalia leadership inakuwaga so shameless that these people use taxpayers' money, but somehow they end up putting their own tags. A broken clock is right twice a day. This is the first thing that mimi na Karen Nyamo tunakubaliana on. I saw her was it this past week? She was talking about that history ya kutumia taxpayers' money and then branding it with yourself should not be legal. And I feel like, yes, that should not be legal. So, kulikuwa na history nilicheki na Kibet Bull. Ilikuwa Kirinyaga MP donated uniforms branded with his name, George Kariuki. A big shame, courtesy of our taxes. Time to call him out. So, hii kifala kilibaki kime contribute nguo, alafu kwa nguo zenyewe zikaandikwa Hon GK. Najua Honorable GK George Kariuki. This is the sort of nonsense that watoi wame, like, there's no humility, because if you are a little bit humble, what you do is, yes, sawa, I'm the one who's donated this uniform, but at least let me not ashame these kids. Mpaka ikae, because saizi kwa hiyo chuo, don't forget these are teenagers. Kwa hiyo chuo kuna watu wanatembea na their own uniform that they bought with their own money. And then you have all these other kids who have to walk around with your GK hapa. So niko sure kuna watu wanaenjoy wako zile za, na mmesota, sasa wanatembea na hiyo GK hapa. Like, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? So this is a sort of nonsense that we have to persevere hapa Kenya. And why do we persevere this nonsense? It's because a lot of us, when it comes to time for voting, we vote against our own interests. We end up electing clowns. And these clowns don't know how to act around power. Najua, they get super excited with the power and they want to show everyone that they are powerful. So they end up doing such stuff. But still, there's this very interesting quote niliona. Hii quote ilikuwa ni ya Crystal Asige. And iko kwa 7 News Global, so I'm really hoping that it's her quote, because kuna kuorganize ma channels mob zile, you never know when something is real ama it's fake. But apparently Crystal Asige alikuwa amesema, dictators don't arrive with guns blazing. They come wearing smiles, posing as men of the people who love God. But behind that charm is brutal control. They handpick a loyal inner circle, then drown them in layers of corruption. They go after journalists, crush civil society, and brand opposition voices as enemies of the state. Then comes the final move. They don't just suspend the law, they become the law. That, ladies and gentlemen, is William Ruto for you. I don't know if this is a true quote from her, because as I said, you'll always see like a lot of quotes online. But this makes sense. When you think about the loyal inner circle, you think about the likes of Akina Farouk Kibet, Akina Sudi, najua, Akina Murkomen. That's that loyal inner circle. Then layers of corruption. You think about Wasewa ODM. They've come and they've been wamekelewa kwa hizo layers of corruption. So now that inner circle is really tight. And even when you talk about the layers of corruption, we can see like loyalty ya wase kama ally, your people who've been bought now the biggest supporters of the president. Konene, so kwa US try kutuma do Kenya, tumia Lemfi number 1 kupatiaga the best exchange rates. Alafu on your first $100 ilonatuma unabaki umepata $20 cashback. Alafu ukitumia the referral code ikonene, si wenyewe pia tunapata $20. So end up umesupport ikonene ndio tukue na better lighting. Cheki jo, saizi si unaona, unazaniona. The last time niliduya day Lemfi ulikuwa unaniona hivi. Was I this clear? And this is because of the other people who supported vile walitumia ile promo code ikonene ya Lemfi. So baki umechangamka, ingia Lemfi. Alafu saizi pia kitu poa, si lazima ubaki umeload wallet yako. Unaweza baki umeshikanisha debit card yako na Lemfi. So kituma do ni instant, ikienda kule inaenda. Alafu kama kawaida pia kuna zero transfer fees, $20 cashback, una support ikonene. Alafu pia vile musemaga jo, Lemfi, international payments for everyone. Ikonene. And as they support the president, you have to wonder like why they supporting. And then you look at like what they're doing. What they're doing. And it's a sad state of affairs. And you can even look at ukiangalia even the clip that we played before, Ida Duale. Ile Duale akisema the reason tunachukia Ethekon in quotes, tunachukia in quotes, that is because he's Turkana. And you have to wonder, why do these people fight for Ruto this passionately? It's because one of the things that I hear is Ruto makes you reach beyond your wildest dreams. Remember he himself amevaa jacket. Hiyo jacket ya Ruto imetosha my dream car. Najua. Like saizi, najua. Mimi saizi ukiniuliza ni gari gani nataka that brand new BYD electric. Ningie pale jo nikachukue tukaga. Kana ni bamba because I'm hoping iko na good sound system. Otherwise kan hizi gari zenyu za miaka 8 mzee anaweza taka like maybe a Volvo ni XC90. Yes, I think that would be good for me, No. Okay, shit, I'm digressing. Hiyo ndio kitu nani amevaa gari kwa mgongo. Like try and imagine that umse amevaa gari. Now try and imagine his inner circle. Like what happens with his inner circle? They must be super rich, najua. Because remember what I was telling you, like 160 such jackets is $1 billion. $1 billion. You're 100% sure he didn't just buy one. Most probably bought 2 or 3. Then kuja kwa zile mashati zake za Stefano Ricci. Kuja kwa kuna time I think Alai mwenyewe alikuwa ametuambia like Ruto patia gato yake allowance sijui ya dongapi. And we are stuck with this situation that we have. But I'm really hoping that Kenyans this time will think beyond tribe. I'm really hoping about that. And yes, ikikam to Ruto, there's another image pia nilichekia Ruto ile ilikuwa super interesting. So this image was about legacy and so legacy projects. So you have Kibaki amepatiwa Thika Road, Uhuru amepatiwa SGR. Alafu since it's all about movement, Ruto amepatiwa watu wako na mguu moja na mguu ingine iko nini. So I don't know, man. Like I really, if this guy succeeds, the country succeeds. So there's that one thing where we have all to somehow root for him. We try to root for him. But these African leaders, it's really hard to root for them because they never see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is the richer that the country is, the richer they become. So the more that they need to try and make the country succeed. But for them, it's all about individuality. That's why you have a situation whereby Sekamin Kibonga juu ya history ya SHA na SHIF, I always talk about the digitization and the way they told us about the data center that's supposed to hold all our data. And then we end up finding that data center has been priced 8 times. So that means that 7 times of that money, a data center that was supposed to cost 13 billion ends up costing 104 billion. That means that 91 billion has gone into individual pockets. And yes, but that's 91 billion in the next 10 years. But still, it's a problem. A good country would be a country whereby every single coin is accounted for, especially in a third world country. You should not have any leaks. Because try and imagine, in the first world countries, those countries go developed kabisa, they take care of every single shilling. And people understand that leadership is about service. So kitokea pale, unakuwa zile stories za, unakuwa na stories za I'm honored to serve. Like you just want to change lives. You want to change. Unakaa pale unatackle unemployment, unatackle poor healthcare, unatackle poor roads, unatackle like place like Kenya. I always look at it and I look at a place like Nairobi, trying to imagine the person who will be able to tackle like just traffic madness through fines. And these fines are unajua ni precise. There is nothing that's stolen. So tukichukua fines tunamwaniaje, there's too much dust in Nairobi, so let's make sure that tume pave everything that's in the push dirt kwa road. Alafu tunaenda kitu ingine, we need fire stations in every ward. Tunabuild hizo fire stations, they end up bringing pia inaitwa nini like money. Then tunaamua wacha tutackle stories za takataka. Hakufai kuwa na Nairobi place yote kuna takataka ni, so ina collectiwa every day. But then with that kuna a certain level of small taxation, a few hundred shillings that a few people are charged, and a few landlords. Try and imagine, like we can change this country, but now everything has been privatized. Garbage collection is privatized. That's supposed to be something that's handled by the county government, not private individuals. Watatakuwa like, ukifanya hivyo, what about hizi youth group zote? They'll survive. You know, we have to always look at the bigger picture, not the small picture. Hata hizi youth groups, you'll find kuna cartels, kuna people that they have to. And why can these youth groups be kwa nini wasimezwe na the county au wamepatiwa hizo jobs za kufanya? So I don't know man. I'm digressed. I think hii post ilikuwa inafaa kuwa tu juu yangu nikibonga juu ya the leaders. And yes, afu nimenotice nikiduisho, nimenotice niko na hii tag. Kuna shindo hii ni tag gani? Ilikuwa ni tag ya Boxpod. Nilikuwa kwa Boxpod wakishoot their 100th episode, celebrating 100 episodes of Boxpod TV. It was a really dope event. And in the process nilikuwa na hii tag. Alafu kuna episode yetu ile ina drop na kwa box itakuwa ikidrop around saa 4 ama ni saa 4 sharp. So make sure you look out for that. Of course the members shall watch the full show. So jiulize, why you not a member? Kwa nini wewe si member? But sahau 10 am Ethekon episode 488. Yes, tukiwa na kwa box itakuwa ikidrop Ethekon.